Hi, I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenburgh Town Supervisor.
I'm Pauline Mosley. Welcome.
I wanted to sort of begin this program by saying during the past couple months, we've had no local weekly newspapers. So basically, the town board meetings have been pretty easy because there's not that much scrutiny of what we do. So if we do things that are wrong, nobody really knows. But that may change. And the reason it's going to change is because there's a new online publication, Rivertowns Current, and Janine Annette is the editor, and we're really pleased.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure if every elected official is pleased because now there's going to be more scrutiny of what's happening in government, but it really is important in a democracy to have people watching over you and telling the public what you're doing right or wrong.
Yes.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you decided to start this publication.
Yeah. So I've lived in the Rivertowns for about 12 years now. And first of all, I'm a voracious reader. I read everything, news, fiction, nonfiction. I just love to read things. But I was a subscriber to the Rivertowns Enterprise, which was a local weekly paper that covered the Rivertowns, specifically Hastings-on-Hudson, Dobbs Ferry, Ardsley, and Irvington. Not Tarrytown or Sleepy Hollow or Yonkers, but just those Rivertowns in particular. I read it every week. I loved it. I was not affiliated with them at all. I didn't write for them at all. But I am a writer. I'm an experienced freelance writer. And the Rivertowns Enterprise rather suddenly went out of business earlier this year. And at first, I heard the rumors, I didn't get my paper one week. I heard the rumors that they were going out of business or had gone out of business. And I thought, well, maybe the delivery was just late this week. Maybe something happened. And then I found out, unfortunately, that the rumors were true. So I had attended a meeting of local citizens concerned about the future of local news in Westchester, and that was convened, as you know, by Lucas Chaffee. And I had nothing to do with organizing that meeting. I just was an attendee at that meeting. But after that meeting, I was really inspired to leap in and take action. And so my idea, and I had discussed this with my husband, who also happens to be a news editor. And so he said to me, well, if I were you, I would just, create a Substack, and we can talk a little bit more about what a Substack is for people who aren't familiar with that term or what the platform is. So I grabbed the URL, rivertownscurrent.substack.com, and I created a logo, and I just decided to dive in and start writing about local issues. And I did it online. I loved having a print paper to hold in my hands that got delivered every week. I still subscribe to print New York Times. At one point I went all digital, but I went back to print because I liked having that print paper. I have a son who's 13, and I like the fact that if we get a paper delivered, he can actually pick it up and look at it. However, the nice thing about starting this new publication online is that I could start it very quickly with really no startup costs up front. And so that's why I chose to start something online to just help fill that gap.
Are you going to have paid employees?
Yes. So I can talk a little bit more about the model for, right now I wouldn't call them employees, but I do believe in compensating people for their time and effort. So I have a few people who are freelancing for me, including one person who used to write for the Rivertowns Enterprise, which is wonderful. And I do pay people for their writing. I don't have a huge budget, but I think as more and more people subscribe, I'll have more of a budget, and I will be able to have more people write for the publication. And so I can talk a little bit about the Substack model and how it works.
Please do.
So the way that it works is Substack is a platform. There's a lot of platforms online where they'll essentially host a publication for you. There's Medium, there's Substack, there's a whole bunch of them. So when you host something on Substack, essentially you don't have to have your own website or host your own website, and they make it so that you can put your publication on the Substack website, and then they make it so that you can easily send it out to people. You could send it out to people in an email, and it's also archived on the website, so people can either get each news item directly in an email, or they can look at the website and view it that way. And then you can subscribe to the publication. You can subscribe to different publications on Substack, and there's a couple of different models for that as well. you can have free subscriptions, you can have paid subscriptions, you can have a mix of both. So the way that I chose to do it is I said that anyone can subscribe for free, but if people have a few bucks to kick in, I say, kick in a few bucks, do a paid subscription. Right now, I'm not putting anything behind a paywall. Some publications, they say, okay, you can read this for free, but this is behind a paywall, meaning you can read so many articles for free and then you have to pay if you want to read more. The model I've been using so far is everything is up there on the website, but I say, if you want to kick in a few bucks to support this, please do. And the benefit that I offer, some people offer benefits to paid subscribers and they'll say, if you pay this, you get this. I say, the benefit you get is that you are a local hero and you are supporting this publication. So people can either subscribe for free and then they could also pay $5 a month to have a monthly subscription, or they could pay $50 a year and then they've committed to paying up front for a year-long subscription. Or people can pay $100 to become a founding member. And again, the benefit is really just that you're supporting this endeavor and you're a local hero if you do that.
Great. So Janine, how frequent does the publication come out?
So right now I don't have a real set schedule.
Oh, okay.
I am trying to do events listings once a week because that's been a really, really popular feature, especially as we get into the spring and summer months when there's tons of activities. So that I've been sending out on Thursday afternoons just because, when I used to get the Rivertowns Enterprise, I always got it on Thursday afternoons and we were heading into the weekend and I would always look at the events. So I've started doing that, pretty consistently on Thursdays. Other than that, I'm still getting ramped up in a lot of ways. And I did tell people, that the posting might be sporadic at first as I get ramped up because it takes time to get story ideas. For a lot of these stories, of course, I have to go out and interview people or attend an event, and then I have to, write about it. And I'm trying to get other people on board to write for the publication as well. And all of that takes time. And the other thing that I've been doing to help fill in some of the gaps is I've established a really nice working relationship with the Hudson Independent, which is another online publication. They used to be print, I believe, and then shifted to online during the height of the COVID pandemic.
Barrett Seaman, who's
Barrett
the editor, it was the White House correspondent for Time magazine. So it's, and they're really excellent.
Yes.
They're one of the best online publications.
Yes. And he reached out to me very early on and said, what can we do to support each other, which I thought was wonderful. So we've been cross-posting a lot of articles. And we have a few, writers that have written now for both publications. And so I think that that's been really helpful for both of us because what I'll do is I'll post part of something that they wrote and then say, to read the rest of this article, go to the Hudson Independent and then link right to it. And he'll do the same. He'll sometimes say, here's an article from the Rivertowns Current, and here's the link. If you want to read the rest of it, you have to go to the Rivertowns Current. So I think it's been helpful for both of us, because he hadn't previously covered Hastings at all. And I've been pretty Hastings centric just because that's the area that I live in. So I tend to know the most probably about what's going on in Hastings. And then, I hope to expand coverage. And in the meantime, having the Hudson Independent has really helped in terms of filling those gaps.
One of the things that I think is really needed is for a change in the state law because in the past, the state basically required every municipality and government to take out legal ads. But if there's no print media, there's basically no place to advertise that people read. So I'm going to, right after this interview, I'm going to write to our state legislators and I'm going to suggest that at least on a temporary emergency basis, while if somebody's trying to start up a publication and there's an eventual intent to also go print, that we should be able to legally advertise. Because if you had Hastings, Dobbs Ferry, Irvington, and Greenburgh advertising, that would be a lot more than just getting a couple additional subscriptions, and that could possibly pay for reporters and things like that. So,
absolutely. I think that would be beneficial to everyone.
The state also just passed law about a week ago, indicating that there are tax credits now given if you hire journalists.
Yes, which I think is wonderful and absolutely a step in the right direction.
How do you, like publicize, what you're doing? How do you get the word out? Because a lot of people don't read and, aren't paying attention to local news. So what's the approach that you're going to do to encourage, many people to subscribe?
I mean, so far it's been a lot of word of mouth. Lucas sent a couple emails to his mailing list, which I think was really instrumental in getting things going. So he's been very supportive. I went on a local podcast, the Rivertowns Story Corps. So that was great. I was interviewed by the local Hastings high school paper, The Buzzer, which was wonderful. And of course, I'm here today. So I think the word is just starting to get out, but it's really been a grassroots word of mouth effort so far.
So I wanted to ask you, if there's an event in one of the Rivertowns, how do they contact you? Or can you give out your website or contact?
Yeah.
Or how can they let you know, please, Janine, could you put my event in your paper or the next coming week?
Yeah, if you just go to rivertownscurrent.substack.com and you look at one of the events listings every week, I have upcoming events, and at the bottom there's a form. You can click on a form to fill out, or if people can't manage the form, they can just send us an email, and then we'll list the event.
I see. So what other information is in the newsletter other than events like concerts and, do you advertise like restaurants, like a restaurant week is coming up or a new restaurant is opening, let's say in Hastings or Irvington or Tarrytown? We've had a real mix of things so far. I can talk about some of the things that we've covered so far. So new businesses are definitely a thing that I've been working on. So I connected with a new business in Hastings called Maker Hive, which was fascinating. And again, this is someone who lives in Hastings. She was the loveliest person, so smart and talented. I had never really sat down and talked to her before. I went over to the Maker Hive and I was so impressed with this business, which really combines, like art and STEM learning and education. And I loved interviewing her and writing about that. I interviewed another person, I think last week, who's opening up a new bookstore in Hastings. Right now it's a pop-up and an online bookstore, and she hopes to have a physical space. So definitely talking to people who are opening new businesses. I also interviewed the person who runs Purple, which is a big arts, a big arts organization in Hastings that was also sort of dormant during the height of the pandemic and is now coming back and doing a lot more live events. So that's definitely something that we're covering. I had another writer, Shauna Liebman, cover like a new restaurant opening, couple new restaurant openings, and she wrote about Restaurant Week. So definitely that's something that we're covering. Right now, I'm writing about the upcoming Board of Elections in Hastings, and I'm talking to each of the 4 candidates who are running for the BOE seats. And nice. A lot of times I think people will post something quickly on social media, but you don't always necessarily get the full story and get the viewpoints of everyone involved. So I love that people have strong opinions. I love that people want to express those opinions. I think it's great when those opinions are based on facts. Luckily it seems like everyone who's running for the BOE is very smart and qualified. So I think it's going to be a tough decision to make, but we can't go wrong really, because everybody so far seems very, very smart and nice and qualified. What else have we written about?
But actually, one of the advantages of a publication like yours is that candidates now have to respond to a reporter, and I can't just say Paul Feiner is terrific, because you could interview me, and then you'll say, oh, by the way, he messed up this, that, or that, or you may talk about some of the controversies or interview somebody who disagrees with me.
So, exactly,
and do you expect to, cover like municipal meetings?
I would like to cover more of that. I've covered a few things. There was one meeting in Hastings where they were talking about giving tax breaks to first responders and senior citizens. And I covered that. There was an open hearing where they heard from some people in the community, and I was able to cover that. I'd like to be able to cover more of that. I need more people to help me because I can't be everywhere. I've covered some other local municipal issues, I would say. Like there was some updates to the leaf blower laws in Hastings. And again, I tried to, present different sides of the issue. I spoke to the Conservation Commission about why they were changing the law. I also spoke to a local landscaper who felt that the laws were punitive for his business. So just to try and, get the facts out there for people to read about.
You mentioned earlier on in the program that you've done a lot of reporting in the past. Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So it's funny, actually, I've been sort of more known for my humor writing rather than doing straight reporting. I had a humor book that came out a few years ago, all about how I'm basically a middle-aged person who couldn't use Venmo and things like that, but I've since learned to use Venmo. And I've done a lot of humor writing, and then I've also done a lot of what I would call, ghost writing. So I have written about a lot of serious issues. People don't necessarily know me for it. But I've written for a wide variety of publications. My writing has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the New Yorker, Real Simple, a lot of different places. So that is my background, pretty much, in a nutshell. And I've written about everything, like I said, from the serious to the silly and everything in between. And that was something I actually loved about the Enterprise. I loved the mix of articles that they had. They would cover serious topics, and then they would cover, the arts and culture. And I really like having that mix. I think it's important to have that mix.
Is there a different skill set in writing for, say, the Wall Street Journal or the New Yorker, or writing for a local publication? When you're writing, do you sort of have to have a different angle or something?
Do
you follow what I'm saying?
I do.
If you're too negative, will that hurt you? Or?
Personally, I try not to be negative, and I'm certainly not practicing gotcha journalism at all.
Right.
And I think that when you are writing locally, especially where we live, in the town that I live in, everybody knows each other. Everybody knows each other. So I just think that's something that you have to take into account. And that's not to say that I wouldn't say something untruthful. I wouldn't say something untruthful, but I just think that you have to take into account that it's a small, tight-knit community. And I love that about where we live. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I lived in Hastings for 12 years when I was a county legislator, and that was the best place. The thing about Hastings that's really great is that I think it's like Berkeley on the Hudson. It's
Yes.
It's like Berkeley, Nyack, and Hastings are all
mixed together.
They're the only communities, but it's that people will fight on anything, and you'll never run out of it. You definitely will never run out of issues or controversies. In Hastings, I also wanted to know, when you're sort of when you're writing stories, how do you get the ideas?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. How do I get ideas? I feel like just paying attention to what's going on around me, and I'm always curious about things. And so, for example, I'll tell you how I came to hear about the person who was opening the bookstore. I was talking to someone else. So I'm on the board of the Friends of the Hastings Library, and I was talking to someone else who's a friend of the library, and that person told me, "Oh, did you hear that this person is opening a bookstore in Hastings?" And I said, "Oh no, I hadn't heard that yet. Can you connect me?" And then she connected us, and so I started talking to her. So just things like that, and just kind of paying attention to what's going on around me, and bouncing ideas off of different people.
Does your publication also promote jobs? Because with the summer coming, we have a lot of students that are going to be available for the summer, high school students and college students. Would your publication, if a local business says, "Oh, I need someone to answer the phones," or "I need someone to work in a hair salon," or "I need an IT person," would you list employment for students?
I haven't done that yet, but that's a really interesting idea, and I'll have to think about a way that might be able to
So you could be a
something that
consultant.
can work.
What about advertising? Have you started taking advertising?
So I have one sponsor so far. That's the Refill Room in Hastings, which is a wonderful store that I support even before they supported the Rivertowns, Karen, and I'm friends with the owners of that store. And they're an ecologically friendly store where you can go and you buy things that are lower waste and lower plastic. And so they sponsored the events listings for 4 weeks, and they've been my first sponsor.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
So it must be very exciting when you start getting sponsors and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the thoughts, that when I attended Lucas Chiaffi's event, I had suggested that they use students and maybe partner with schools where every school has a school newspaper, and some of the students might be students who would want to cover, say, a town board meeting or a village board meeting or a school board. Is that something that could be a possibility? Or even, we were talking before the program, even using the studio and having Rivertowns Current sponsor your own, like it could be weekly or monthly news program, and maybe you and some of the students could host it, and then they could talk about some of the things, and then you could air, you could publicize in your publication a summary of the news story.
Yeah, that's something I would love to get into, is working with students. I would love to get into that once I have things more firmly established and get into more of a routine. I would definitely love that. I think that's a great idea.
And what do you say, the Enterprise, I read it every week, but they didn't have like a lot of, they probably had 1,500 readers. I think that was it. And even the Scarsdale Inquirer, which was around for 125 years, might have had double or something. What do you say to people who say, gosh, we've had publications that have been around for like a century and they can't make it, and every day there's more and more weekly publications around the country going out of business. Are you going sort of against the trend, and what could you do to sort of like beat the system?
Yeah, I mean, the media landscape is evolving, right? News is evolving. And so, I've had some people say to me, what's your long-term plan with this? And I've said, I'm not sure. I just had a short-term plan. And we'll see what my short-term plan evolves into in terms of a long-term plan. But I think that, it's nice to have the ability to be nimble. And if I decide that I want to do something really quickly, I can do it really quickly. Like when President Biden was visiting Irvington, I was able to act quickly. And a lot of news outlets were covering that. And so the angle that I took is I said, okay, as someone who lives here and as a parent, what I want to know is how is this going to affect, I heard that the Hastings schools were going to close early. And I thought, if I was a local parent, I'd want to know how is this going to affect me and my kids? So I quickly reached out to friends of mine who live in Dobbs, Irvington, and Ardsley and said, can you give me the information that your school district gave you on school closures? And I put that together, and then I did that post really quickly so I could get the information out there. And then after that, I saw a bunch of other news outlets taking that angle, but I think I was the first one to do it. Awesome. So that was my spin on it. Other people might have focused more on, the fact that it was a fundraiser that he was attending, or who was hosting the fundraiser, and diving into the background of the people hosting the fundraiser. And I didn't really get into that too much. I mean, I touched upon it, but for me, I just thought, okay, how is this going to affect the schools and the traffic and everything?
Well, one of the ways it really affects average people is when the school basically closes and people have jobs.
Right.
They have to get daycare, or they have to quit work early.
Right.
So it really has like a big impact, and people who aren't going to the fundraisers, they're stuck in traffic for a long period of time. So they may be really upset. Plus, one of the issues which I was so surprised never gets focused on is the cost to local governments, because the federal government doesn't reimburse anybody for a president's visit. So, like the police chief, he said to me the day before, he said, I want to let you know there's going to be a lot of overtime because we have to provide mutual aid. And that's something that people really don't think about. And it would be really interesting if, if like when a president of the United States shows up, the news media would say, how much is this going to actually cost the community?
Exactly.
Especially if you're not going to be able to shake his hand. So if you shake his hand, then it's worth it. But if otherwise, but that's great. If somebody wants to subscribe to your publication, how do they do so? And could you tell us the website?
Yeah, it's rivertownscurrent.substack.com. And if you go to that URL, you'll be able to just hit a subscribe button. And then, like I said, anyone is welcome to subscribe for free. But if you feel like you can spare a few bucks, if you've got $5 a month to spare, which is what the cost of one big coffee at certain chain stores, if you feel like you could spare $5 a month to support the publication, I would say do that if you can. If you can't, that's no problem. Or if you can spare $50 a year or $100 a year and you want to support the publication, I welcome that. If you can't do that, no problem. Subscribe for free. If you have a few bucks to kick in, I appreciate the support.
Can you just tell us who is your primary audience? Is it women, or do you know yet?
I don't know yet. I don't have a data analysis that goes that deep. What I can see is, and I don't think it goes. I know it's all people in the Rivertowns, right?
Exactly.
I can see, who subscribes like by state, and of course it's like 99% New York State. But I do think. Probably the audience. I know that one of my acquaintances said to me, well, you should really print this out and bring it to all the local libraries so that seniors who aren't online can read it. And I said, I love that idea, but right now I don't have the ability to personally do that, to figure out how to, transition this into something that I could print out and then distribute, because I did this because I don't have the resources to do that. But I said, I love the idea. I can't personally do that. But other than that, I think that I know I have a few high school students who have subscribed. I know I do have some senior citizens who are digitally savvy who have subscribed, and everyone in between.
Families and single people?
I don't have that type of data, but anecdotally, I would think
so,
yes.
Yeah.
When people subscribe, I can see their email, and a lot of people I'll recognize the email and I say, oh, that's my friend so-and-so, and that's my friend so-and-so. And then some people I don't know who they are, and so I don't really know anything about them. But I'm also trying to cover topics that are of, interest to different groups,
Wonderful.
So I'm really trying to do things that cover a wide cross-section.
Right. And again, are you going to be focusing on like all these children's awards that they get? Because that's a way of really picking up. I think the Scarsdale Inquirer and the Enterprise, they'll always focus on, this
the graduation.
Somebody is valedictorian. Let me learn about them. She's a sports star. He's a sports star. Because then people will subscribe because they'll want to see articles about their kids.
I desperately need a sports writer, because this is one thing that I'm not good at. I have a very sporty child who plays multiple sports. He plays baseball, he plays soccer, he plays basketball, he plays tennis. But when it comes to soccer, for example, people have explained offsides to me a million times and I still never get it right. Don't even try.
I think Todd Sliss, who used to write for the Scarsdale Inquirer, he has his own site, but maybe you might want to combine with him or work with him, because he's just doing sports.
I should reach out to him.
And there's not a lot of people there's only a certain group that would want to subscribe for sports. So this is a way of like mixing different connections.
I want to cover that, and that's definitely my own personal failings that I'm not a sports writer. That's one thing I'm no good at writing about, but I want other people to write for this publication.
So
I don't want it to just be me.
So people want to write. Have they contact you again?
Yeah, if they look at the website, my email is on the website, and they can email me and reach out to me. And I would love to hear from people who are, interested in.
And your email is rivertownscurrent@gmail.com.
Yes.
So again, the next.
This is great.
So I'll look for the Pulitzer Prize.
Oh yes.
Well, it's wishful thinking, but I appreciate it.
That's good. So when Rivertowns Current gets the Pulitzer Prize, you could say I was the one who predicted it.
I'll do that.
There you
Okay,
go.
good. That will be my claim to fame. So
There
I
you
can
go.
put that on my resume. Good, but great. Thanks a lot. Good luck. And
Thank you so
I really
much.
appreciate
Awesome.
this is a really major asset to our community. We really need
really is.
local publications.
Thank you, and I appreciate your interest and your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.